So, what if I told you that a single verse of scripture, something written well over 1400 years ago, could be describing two completely different things at the very same time? I mean, the end of the world and a fundamental law of modern physics. It sounds pretty wild, right? Well, today we're doing a really deep analysis of two verses from the Quran's Surah on Naml that seem to do just that. We're going to explore a profound paradox that has absolutely fascinated scholars for centuries. So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the verses themselves. Then, we'll get into the whole apocalyptic context they set up. And after that, we'll tackle the central mystery, the moving mountains. From there, we're going to weigh the evidence for the two major interpretations before we see how it all comes together in his final, really powerful statement about creation. All right, let's get right to the source of all this. These are the two verses that are at the absolute heart of our discussion today, the ones that have sparked just centuries of debate. Okay, so here they are. Verses 87 and 88 of Surah An-Nam. The first verse, it paints this picture of just cosmic terror. The second one presents this incredible paradox about the very ground we stand on. You put them together, and you get this puzzle that touches on, the end of days, the nature of reality itself, and the absolute power of God. First things first, we need to set the scene. Verse 87 gives us this incredibly vivid picture of a terrifying, pivotal moment, the Day of Judgment. So verse 87 really sets the stage for us. It talks about a specific day and a very specific event. And on the day the horn is blown. Now that phrase right there, it immediately anchors us in what you'd call an eschatological context. Basically, end of time stuff. The events that are about to follow, they're not ordinary. They are cosmic. They are final. So you might be asking, what exactly is this blowing of the horn? Well, in Islamic theology, this is the cataclysmic signal. It's the event that kicks off the Day of Judgment. And it's not some subtle thing. We're talking about an earth-shattering, heaven-shaking moment that completely changes the very fabric of existence. Now check out the immediate effects that are laid out right here in the verse. First, a universal terror. The Arabic word for it is fazia, and it just grips everything in existence. Then we get this really intriguing exception, except for those whom Allah wills. That's a little mystery that scholars have been pondering for ages. And finally, the outcome is just absolute humble submission. Everyone, everything comes before God in a state of dakhirin, which means they are completely humbled, totally subdued. Now, before we get to the mountains, and trust me, we will, it's really important to understand a key idea that the verse is building on. You see, to really appreciate the chaos of the end times, the Quran first points to the perfect order of the world we live in right now, and it uses that as a sign of tawheed, the absolute oneness of God. And the argument is actually quite elegant and simple. A chaotic universe with all these competing forces, well, that might suggest multiple creators. But a universe that operates with predictable, stable laws, think about the sun rising and setting every single day, that points logically to a single, unified, and purposeful will behind it all. And another verse from this very same surah makes this point brilliantly. It asks, "Have they not seen that we made the night, that they may rest therein, and the day giving sight?" This isn't random, it's a perfect system, right? It's designed with a purpose. The consistency of this cycle is presented as this irrefutable evidence against the whole idea of polytheism. The argument basically goes that such a finely tuned system could only come from one source. It's a sign, but it's one specifically for a people who believe. For those who are willing to see the design in all the details. And that brings us right to the heart of our analysis. So, having established the order of the present and the chaos of the future, verse 88 hits us with a statement about the physical world that is frankly just staggering. Just take a second to let that sink in. Mountains are our ultimate symbol of permanence, right? Of stability, of being rock solid. Yet this verse presents this stunning paradox. You see the mountains, you think they are rigid and totally unmoving, but in reality, they are in motion. They're passing by just like clouds drift across the sky. So this immediately brings up the central question, right? The puzzle that has fueled centuries of scholarly investigation and which is at the very core of our analysis today. When does this happen? Is this verse describing a future apocalypse, or is it talking about a present reality that's hidden in plain sight? So let's just step right into the heart of this debate. Scholars have pretty much landed on two primary interpretations, two completely different ways of understanding this whole phenomenon. Let's dig into the evidence for each one. Okay, so here are the two main theories, side by side. The first one argues that this whole description of moving mountains refers to the apocalyptic events on the Day of Judgment. The second one, It proposes a radically different idea, that this verse is actually a scientific statement about the reality of our present world, the rotation of the Earth itself, which carries the mountains along with it. All right, let's dive into the first viewpoint. This one is often seen as the more traditional interpretation, that this movement of mountains is a feature of the last day. Now, the evidence for this view is actually really strong, and it's very much based in the text. First off, you've got contextual proximity. The verse about the mountains comes immediately after the verse about the blowing of the horn. It's a direct continuation. Second, there's thematic consistency. The whole section is about the end of the world, so it would be kind of weird to just suddenly drop in a verse about geology or astronomy. And third, and this is maybe the most powerful point, this idea is backed up by numerous other verses in the Quran. Yeah, and the Quran itself seems to support this view all over the place, describing the fate of mountains on Judgment Day in these really vivid, destructive terms. They'll become like carded wool, light and fluffy, or like a heap of poured sand, just losing all solidity. Or even more directly, my Lord will blast them to pieces. All these verses create a powerful, consistent picture of mountains being utterly annihilated on that day, which fits perfectly with this idea of them passing like clouds. Okay, now let's explore the second major interpretation, the one that's really gained a lot of steam in the modern era. This view says that the verse isn't about the future at all, but that it's a scientifically precise description of our present reality. So the people who back this idea, they point to some really specific language. The phrase, thinking them rigid, or you perceive them as stationary. It explicitly highlights a conflict between what we see and what's actually happening. And that is exactly our experience on Earth, right? We don't feel the planet spinning. What's more, the comparison as the passing of clouds is just a beautiful metaphor for this massive, silent, effortless motion. Not some violent explosion, but the graceful turning of a planet in space. And finally, if you read it this way, the conclusion of the verse, the work of Allah who perfected all things, becomes a direct commentary on the incredible unseen perfection of the cosmic clockwork that we all live in. And just as a quick aside, some scholars actually add even more detail to this, dividing the horn blast into 3 distinct stages: terror, death, and then resurrection. Our verse would fall right into that first stage, the horn of terror, which really helps to put that apocalyptic view into context. Okay, now let's get back to the verse's powerful conclusion. So here's the crucial point. Regardless of which interpretation you lean towards, the apocalyptic one or the scientific one, the verse ends with this incredibly powerful statement that frames the entire phenomenon. This concluding phrase is the absolute key, the work of Allah who perfected all things. It's a declaration of absolute mastery and just flawless design. It's like a divine signature on the marvel that was just described. And this is really the genius of the verse's structure. Think about it. If you believe the mountains move on Judgment Day, this phrase speaks to the perfection of God's power to both create and to destroy. But if you believe the verse is describing the Earth's rotation, then it speaks to the hidden, intricate perfection of the cosmos He's already made. Either way you slice it, the conclusion stands as this incredible testament to divine craftsmanship. And then, just when you think you have it figured out, the verse makes this stunning pivot. After describing this immense cosmic sign, either the world's end or its intricate motion, it brings the focus right back to you, to the individual. Indeed, He is aware of what you do. It connects the macrocosm to the microcosm, linking this divine power over galaxies and mountains directly to a divine knowledge of our personal actions. So after all this, what's the final verdict from our investigation? Well, maybe the true miracle here isn't about having to choose one interpretation over the other. Maybe the miracle is the text itself, a text so perfectly crafted that it can speak about the end of the world and the mechanics of the cosmos in the very same breath, revealing new layers of meaning to every single generation. The depth of the debate is in and of itself a sign of the verse's perfection.